Hi everyone, it's Brittany Drozd, and I am here with the second video in our Create Your Legacy series. And the purpose of these videos are to give you a in-depth, intimate view of what other people have done to create a legacy that they love while they're living. Now that's the key distinction. We don't want to talk about legacy in the past tense, someone who's already died and this is what they left behind, but people who are consciously living, consciously creating a way to positively impact their world, the people in their lives, and their community. So today I have with me JK, and JK and I met because we share two similar locations that we absolutely love, Rhode Island and the Dominican Republic. He splits his time there and has an amazing farm that now he is starting to offer experiences too for you to interact with and get all the goodness from. But I want JK to introduce himself and what he does so that you guys can get a better idea.
Thanks, Brittany. Wonderful. Great to see you. We're doing this video. I'm down here in the Dominican Republic and have been here since October 1. We're in our third year. I bought the property, this 100 acres in the mountains 3 years ago. It was really a process. It wasn't really something that I had planned on doing, but I was thinking over the years, just living here, that I wanted to live more simply. As an activist and an affordable housing developer, kind of doing the fast-paced thing in the city, went through some trials and tribulations and a lot of stress, borrowing money from banks and paying it back, and the fluctuations in the market. And was just looking for a way to kind of reduce stress and connect more simply and to be more present. And so over a period of years, learning to surf later in life and meeting my friends and being comfortable in the community here, one day we were headed up to the mountains to search for a place to swim, and we were looking for a pig roast. Mm-hmm. And it was the fourth year we'd been doing this. And they took me to a place. And actually, the real story, I'll tell it quickly, was that the first year I did this pig to thank the community for sharing the waves. It was an amazing party. The second year was incredible. Somebody actually drowned during the party, a tourist, and it was quite traumatic, and it didn't make for much of a party, obviously, and we were part of that process. The third year, there was a local man who runs the beach, and he stole the pig and served it to the police and his political friends. So it was this fourth year that we said, let's take control of this, cook the pig ourselves, invite who we want, cook it when we want. And that's when we headed to the mountains on this journey. And I found this piece of land. And along the way, my friends would get out of the car and show me a small farm where somebody was living very simply, growing their own food. And then I started to do some reading about permaculture and actually started to negotiate on a piece of land. And over a period of time, after getting kind of some stern warnings from a lot of people that not really a good idea for a gringo to head into the mountains to buy 100 acres in the middle of nowhere. And but there was something about my car just kept driving up that mountain road to search for this piece of land and found it. And the process has been absolutely magical. And, if you'd said to me, 10 or 15 years ago that I'd be 60 years old, living 8 months a year on a jungle farm in the mountains, growing arugula, I would have said you're out of your mind. But this is the path. This is the path I've taken.
That's awesome. And so what are you creating with the farm, besides the arugula?
Well, what we really want to create is a place where the energy is positive, where we're working with the land, not against it. Permaculture itself is a wonderful, as I read more about it, it's really magical. And, as a surfer, you're riding a wave and you're really working with the wave and reading the wave, and no two waves are the same, but you're not fighting against it if you're going to surf a wave successfully. So the idea was to work with this land in a way that we all work together, that was like riding a wave, that didn't feel like we were under pressure, because when you actually, the first time you look at 100 acres of land, it's quite overwhelming. Mm. But as you get into the process and you start to work with the locals and to earn their respect and to give the respect that they need, and to start to read about the process and experience it, if your intentions are positive, then a lot of positive things have come out of it. We started with one cow, and now we have 10. There was one horse, and now there's 7 or 8. There's a greenhouse. We've planted 300 fruit trees. But all along the way, my decision was to work with the local people in the community and give them 50% of everything we did. Because I'm learning. I don't know what I'm doing, and I need to learn from them. They need the skills I have. And what I found was all the skills I ever had, anything I've ever learned my entire life, I've had to bring to bear on this project. And so it's happening in a way that's fun. Each day, somebody asked me what my goal for the farm was going to be, 5 or 10 years from now. I said, I really don't want to look back at this project and say that the first couple of years were the best years, because they were the simplest, the least complicated, and had the most joy. So the goal of the farm is each day to be present, to be in the moment, to try to create a little bit of magic, whether it's trying a new fruit tree that we didn't think would grow and watching it grow. Or yesterday, 3 days ago, we put 1,000 seeds. I watched a man for the first time use this wonderful soil to germinate 1,000 seeds. And I didn't know you had to put them in small containers and put them in the dark for 3 days, And I went yesterday, and these 1,000 seeds are all little sprouts now, which will now go into the nursery and then go into the greenhouse. So the idea is, what I would love to have happen, and which is happening, people coming to visit, doing some coaching and teaching, because I'm finding that people are inspired by this process. I've undertaken this without really having any expertise at all, but using kind of the universal rules that we think about if we want success, which are love what you do, dream, feel the fear and do it anyway. Respect and love the people around you, and, wonderful things might happen. So I'm 3 years into this now, and I'm happy to say that each day is more magical than the next. There was a moment last year when I was coming out of the field. I was coming to the farm, and it had just rained. And I looked down over, and I could see about 30 acres from where the caretaker's house is. And I could see the cows grazing, the horses grazing, the dogs were running and playing, the cats were playing with the dogs. And there was a woman coming out of the field with a bucket of food on her head that she had just been given by one of my partners for helping him to harvest some of the batata. There's kind of a sweet potato that we planted. And I was really, started to weep, because for me, it was so beautiful. So it's hard to describe, the joy from something like this when it starts to work, or the fact that yesterday I took a bag of arugula and brought it down to the town and brought it into one of the restaurants and traded that. I said, take what you think is of value, and let's do a trade. And you tell me what you'd like to trade. And he took just 2 or 3 handfuls of this. He said, I'll trade you for a sandwich. So I'm going to go back next week and have a sandwich from the fruits of this little arugula seed that was planted. So these are the things that I'm happening. In the past, working in the city and doing developments with the nonprofits was wonderful, but they're so complicated, and there's so much stress involved. And I am just completely enjoying living more simply. And if this farm can encourage people to dream, to live simply, to connect with others, to be present, to appreciate the natural environment, which we're so lucky to have, and we're doing such damage around the world. Really, if this piece of land can continue to produce, if I do it right, it should produce food and take care of community long after I'm gone. And that would be really magical.
Right. That would be an amazing legacy, right? So I ask everyone this question because one of my big missions is to turn the antiquated definition of legacy on its head and get people thinking about what do I want my life to really look like while I'm living it, and lifestyle by design type thinking. So I have to ask you, how would you define the word legacy?
Oh, I don't know. I think living a balanced life, loving the people that you surround yourself with, maybe having a reputation for not really wanting to sweat the small stuff. The legacy of the old Confucius saying, fall down 7 times, get up 8. I mean, I've lost everything 3 times. I spent 30 days in a psychiatric hospital when I was 23, diagnosed as bipolar. First time, that was starting over again. 91, lost millions of dollars. 1991, same thing in 2008. Never gave up, never gave up. And there were times, believe me, when I wanted to. And actually, I think that the surfboard actually saved my life, because in 2008, I really didn't want to get out of bed, but I forced myself to jump into the water and catch an overhead wave and come out bulletproof. So that gave me the energy to continue. So the legacy of really not wanting to quit, of wanting to create change, of wanting to include others. I mean, I think that's some of what
Right.
I'd like to.
I love that analogy you used of surfing, because it's resilience is such an important piece of looking at what we're capable of and really building something much bigger than ourselves. But it's hard to really create a tangible example of our resilience, because it can be so abstract. But that's a really great analogy of surfing, that you came out and you were
Thanks.
still there, right? And you can use that strength, you can transfer.
Right.
It can be used for any other place you want to take a risk, right? So
No question. And today, when I'm serving, just to add, every morning I get up, it's such a gift, because the priority is to get out in that water every morning for the physical well-being, for the spiritual well-being, to connect with friends. And that morning, when I start there at sunrise and catch some waves with my friends, and then get into the car and head to the farm, the day is set. There's not much that can go wrong, because you're prepared. You're so joyous that anything that comes along, you're prepared to deal with. So, but really important, I think, for people to, think about eating well and exercising, connecting, really that mind-body connection, and then go for whatever you're into. And it's going to happen, because your attitude is going to be so positive.
Right. So that's part of your routine. That's how you set your mindset for the day. That's awesome. So
every morning I try to be there. Go ahead.
Good. So you gave me some examples, but what were some defining moments or decisions that have led you to creating this, the farm? You talked about, some moments where you had it all and had lost things. But let's talk about specifically leading up to the farm.
I think the career in finance, and I think watching sometimes can be very discouraging for folks in business, to see the powers that be, the large corporations. They can have a lot of influence, sometimes more influence than we'd like to think about. And the present political environment, or watching, sometimes people believe Congress is not really working in everybody's best interests.
Right.
And for me, this was an opportunity maybe to control a little bit more of my own destiny. Although it's really funny, as these two hurricanes came down the pike, Maria and Irma, this year, and just missed us, I was very cognizant of the fact that as globally, we're really, some of us, not all, are ignoring the dangers and the damage we're doing to our environment. And in my mind, some of these storms are more powerful because of what we're doing as humans. So there's also, in that thinking, this is also a way to reduce the footprint. My wife and I will be probably selling the house we built, which is a pretty big house in Rhode Island, to downsize, to live more simply, reduce that footprint, think about our actions. And I probably shouldn't have waited till 60 to think like this. And this is really where I am now. I wish I'd been thinking like I am now when I was 20. And so, but better late than never. And perhaps working within the system gave me a little bit more resources to do some of the things I'm doing now. But I think looking at the system overall, go ahead.
Sorry. So just in summary, you feel that the perspective you had in that corporate finance sector helped you see, oh crap, this isn't a good trajectory. I need to make up for those years I was living that way, or, do the best you can to teach other people that there's a different way to live.
And I think you have to be careful here, because as a coach, as CTI talks about, I'm not assuming that the way I'm living is what's great for everybody. As a coach, the coaching I'm doing now, everybody has their own agenda. That's why my website is youragenda, not mine.com, because I'm not thinking that I have the answer.
Mhm.
Everybody has their own answer. And so what I've been doing with the people that have been visiting and the clients that have been coming is, tell me what your dream is. Your dream is priceless. I'm doing what I love. I'm super curious about what you're doing, and let me help you get there. I have the time, I have the energy, and the joy, and feeling like I'm coming from a very authentic place, that maybe that can help people.
Mhm. Awesome. That's a really great distinction that you made, that it's true. It's not that one way of living is better than the other, but if people are interested in learning more about what you're doing and the way you're doing it, then you're available for that. I like that. Um,
Absolutely. And one of the things I just wanted to add this. I loved my career as an activist. I loved my career as an affordable housing developer.
mhm.
I may do some more of that in the future. I'm not cutting that off. I loved it. It was exciting. It was great to go into some of the toughest neighborhoods in metropolitan Boston and turn them around. We did home ownership opportunities. To see somebody take what was a derelict building, move into it, and own it was tremendously gratifying. And those were all lessons that I need presently. So I'm not saying I would probably do the same work, maybe the mindset, and maybe a little bit more open to the things that I'm doing now. And maybe they could have been done in conjunction. So not one's bad, one's not. It's just, this is what's led me to where I am now.
Right.
That's all.
Right. And that was the question, to be fair. So tell me about a huge failure that you feel comfortable sharing about, or one that really, really influenced your life.
Failure. Well, I suppose just before a nervous breakdown in 2020, when I was 22, 23, I would consider that a failure, but I also consider it a gift. I was dealing with issues with my father. I needed his approval. I was in a hurry, I thought, to have financial independence. Maybe I was trying to prove something.
Mm.
And that was a big mistake, to try to live your life, for the approval of somebody else. So, it cost me, 30 days and a restart and a complete reboot of my brain. But it was, looking back, as difficult as it was an incredible gift, because it freed me completely from that issue.
Mhm.
And so other failures have been, sometimes I was too fast to jump into a deal, so hungry for success, that monetary gain, that decisions were made that were not that well thought out. I
Mm.
remember having a drink with someone. I wanted to be a rock promoter and a movie producer at one point. We had a cocktail. He said he was going to do a rock concert, and I gave him a check for $25,000 to promote a rock concert. Now, it wasn't a rock concert; it was a folk festival, and we were expecting 15,000 people. Well, 300 showed up. So I there, and I can go on and on about these
Yeah.
business opportunities that I did that didn't work out.
Mhm.
Luckily, the nonprofits and the real estate was always the most solid thing. I always went back to what I knew. But anytime I tried something outside of my real field of expertise that I wasn't in charge of, failure right down the line.
Yeah.
So
Right. It sounds like, so some of those things were external validators that maybe you were seeking, right? So like figuring out the stuff with our parents, like who doesn't want their parents' approval? That's something we battle our whole lives and try and figure out how to manage. The ego getting in the way, right? With making financial decisions, not slowing down enough to really figure out if this serves you or not. Okay. Those are really powerful examples. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for
correct.
being willing to be that vulnerable and share that.
No. It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
So, what was something that you were scared to do, but ended up really working out? Sounds like you probably have different reasons.
No, that's really great. No, that's really great, because I've spent my entire life in fear, and I'll say that because I always wanted to do these things that I imagined I wanted to do. So I wanted to become a hang glider pilot. I wanted to become a pilot, and it scared the hell out of me. For 15 years, every time I jumped off the cliff, it scared the hell out of me.
That sounds normal.
Truth.
Every time I jumped off
It
the cliff,
was.
scared the hell out of me.
Well, there are other people I watched do it that didn't seem to have as much fear. Now, So that was 15 years. I've been playing polo for 35 years. Played in 11 countries. Home club was in Boston for 5 years, and the last 26 years in Newport, Rhode Island. Every Saturday before I had to play a match, I can't be around a human being because the fear, is so palpable. And then you work through it, and you get into that match, and you're galloping, down the field with 7 guys chasing you with sticks, and the ball's moving at 100 miles an hour. And there was it took out of the 35 years, there were probably 20 that the fear was so strong, and then the last 15, I've dealt with it more effectively. Surfing, starting to surf and surfing in hurricane swell, double overhead waves. You see a perfect wave off in the distance, you think, well, I can try that. But when you actually get close to it, it's quite daunting.
It's so much
I know
bigger
your husband knows very well.
Yeah.
It's so much bigger when you get up close. But to actually paddle into a 10 or a 12-foot wave, a double overhead wave, and drop into that and be riding down this wave, and you're looking at a mountain of water, there's a feeling that's just indescribable. So I would say, to folks that are fearful, I've lived my whole life that way. You can feel the fear, and you can do it anyway. It takes practice. You got to be prepared to take your knocks. There were times learning to surf, I thought, there's no way. I like to say it took me 1,000 days to learn to surf. There's ice in the parking lot. My wife laughed one day. There was 3 feet of snow in the driveway, and the guy came to plow the driveway. I said, forget the driveway. Please tow my car out. I need to get to the beach to surf because there are amazing waves there. So there's this incredible energy you get from it. And there's also great energy when you overcome the fear and accomplish something. Isn't that the most fun? And I think that the purchase of this farm, I needed all of the experience, all of that fear, all of the experience to know that no matter how difficult it's going to be, at the end of the day, you really got to be prepared to die for your dream. Mm-hmm. And
so when you gave these examples of how when you were learning to surf, when you were playing polo, there were moments where you had so much more fear, but you've learned to manage it better. What tools or strategies are you using to better manage your fear and still move forward in action? Because that is the differentiator. People who take action to pursue their dreams versus those that have ideas but are too stuck in the fear. So what do you use?
I think you have to just be prepared to fail spectacularly. Just failure is really, it feels terrible while it's happening, but each and every time it becomes such a gift. So don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. You're going to learn so much from your failures. But if you don't act, well, then there might be some regret down the road. So I like to say, whenever I was presented an opportunity, something I really wanted to do, I just went ahead and said, what's the worst that can happen? Well, you can die, and then it's not a problem. But if it's a horrible experience, well, you're going to learn something incredible as well. Mm-hmm. So take those tools and apply those. And I would say that's what, over the years, you realize, 95% or 99% of what you worry about never happens. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's something I ask people all the time. I say, well, tell me your biggest fear in pursuing this. And they can list off a bunch of things. And I say, oh, did that happen to you? Like, how did you create this idea that would happen? And 99% of the time, people have never experienced that thing that is their greatest fear. In fact, they don't even know people who have experienced it. So it's this completely external idea that, I don't know, maybe they heard somewhere on the news or something, but that stops them. And that's what's so wild. If this dream is from within you and we're letting things so far beyond us stop us, it doesn't even make sense. But sometimes just having that, understanding those connections or lack of connections really helps people see that, oh, I'm stopping myself. So now it really is within me to take the next step. So those are really great examples. Thank you. Lastly, I want to ask, what advice, so you've given tons of advice and great little pieces of wisdom throughout, but if you had to give one last piece of advice to someone who is in the place I just described, has an idea, but has the fear, full of uncertainty, and you said, just go for it, just take action. Is there some kind of mantra, or is there some kind of exercise that you could recommend, or any other type of advice for someone to actually take that first step?
Well, it's funny. When I got out of the hospital when I was 22, 23, it's like I had to learn to write again.
Mm.
And they said, you're going to need medication. And I thought to myself, well, my body needs to be strong again. So forget about playing polo or flying or doing anything. I said, today I'm going to walk out my front door, and it's 100 yards to the corner of Marie Street from my street on Mount Ida Road in Dorchester. I'm going to run to the corner. That's what I'm going to do today. And then I'll walk for a while. Mm. So my advice would be, however large it is, you always hear people talk about, how do you climb Mount Everest? One step at a time, so do something small, something little. During our coaching training, it was wonderful. People have dreams and they talk about what they want to accomplish in the coaching, and everybody went around the room and said, what do you want? What's your dream? And there was not a single mother, actually married with a child. She said, I really just want, in my life, I want to be able to have 1 hour to myself to read a book. So we spent some time around the room, like helping her. How can we get you that 1 hour? Everybody's dream is different. Doesn't matter what size it is. Just take that little step. And then the next day, another one. And pretty soon you're there.
That's awesome. Really well put. So focus on starting with something really small. It could even be unrelated. Like find your own version of that nearest corner to run to or walk to, and just getting in the habit a little bit more at a time. That's powerful. Thank you. I've really enjoyed sitting down, getting the opportunity to talk to you. We know each other like on the water or on the polo field, right? And me as a spectator, which is awesome if you're local in Rhode Island. But so our favorite place is in the north of Dominican. And a lot of people, when they think of it, all-inclusive resorts like Punta Cana is very different from that. I encourage you to check out Cabarete or surrounding areas if you get the opportunity. And how can people get in touch with you if they want to see pictures of the farm or your offerings? How do they reach you?
www.youragendanotmine.com.
Awesome. So thanks again, JK, and thank you everyone for joining us and watching. If you have any questions for JK, please write them below in the comments section, and I will make sure that he gets them and gets back to you. All right, so take what nuggets of wisdom really served you. Think about what is that one small action step that you can take towards creating your legacy today. Thanks again. Bye.